Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. So first of all, I'm going to disclaim we are again in the nursery that you have not yet seen and you still probably won't for a little while. Number one being that I'm still waiting for my mom to reupholster the glider we have in this room. It has nothing on it, no cushions or anything, because it's being reupholstered. And also because now this room has been in use for the last week and a half, almost 2 weeks, and because of that it's gotten a little messy. So eventually you guys will see this room, but for now I'm gonna keep teasing you with recording in here because it's the best lighting in the house, even though right now the lighting would be better in like 2 hours, but I just didn't feel like waiting that long. But anyway, so I'm going to be talking about my labor and delivery story more in depth because I was a little disappointed that I didn't get my labor and delivery vlog was not exactly how I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be more personal than what it is. I wanted it to be more realistic of things that happened. I wanted to be able to get video of, you know, me being in active labor and things like that. But it didn't really happen that way. Number one being that we could not record during delivery. That was just one of the hospital policies. Also, the fact that once I was in active labor, the last thing on my mind was picking up a camera or having anybody pick up a camera while you're sitting there writhing in pain. And the only time that I wasn't in pain during active labor, I was asleep. So it just kind of happened that way, and it kind of sucks. I wanted it to be a lot better and more in depth, but it is what it is, and now I can at least tell you exactly how everything went. So to get right into it, this was now July 10th, which was the day after my due date. I had an appointment with my weekly observation appointment, and my doctor performed a membrane sweep. I talked about this in my last bump date video. So that happened. The next morning, the 11th, I had a non-stress test. They scheduled me for a non-stress test because once you're overdue, they start to have like a little bit of concerns, and they just want to make sure that everything's still all good. They want to get you hooked up and hear the heartbeat and all that good stuff. So the next morning, it was at 8 o'clock in the morning. So this is how this happened. Number one, Ray had been working an overnight job that he no longer works for, but he had weekends off, which like he would basically have to like recycle himself every beginning of the week, because like Sunday night he had off and he slept Sunday night like with me like he would have on any normal day, but working an overnight shift, he would be sleeping like early evening and then going to work at night for his overnight shift. So he slept Sunday night, having to work Monday night, and all day Monday he didn't sleep because he slept on Sunday and he wasn't tired to go to sleep. So he didn't sleep at all. He came home from work at around 7:30. Our non-stress test was at 8. So as soon as he came home, we had to go. Now I also woke up a tad late, so I didn't eat anything, I didn't drink anything, and we had decided, you know, when we came back home, we were going to have breakfast and then he was going to be able to go to sleep. So we get to the hospital for the non-stress test, and like any normal hospital, you have to park a gajillion miles away from the entrance of the hospital. And I didn't realize until we were walking in the door of the hospital, I was like, oh shit, I forgot my bottle of water that I had in the car, because like I said, I hadn't eaten or drank anything. And I was like, whatever, you know, they're going to give me water anyway, because they like to have you force cold liquids when you're on the monitor so that it gets the baby moving and things like that. So I knew they were going to get me water. But anyway, we get there, I get all hooked up. Now also, I don't know if I mentioned this in my bump date, I think I did. I was scheduled for an induction on the 18th. It was the following Tuesday. So if he didn't come on his own by then, I was going to be induced the following week. So we get there, we get all hooked up. Ray was now in the chair next to me trying to get a nap, and I'm on the monitor for like 20-25 minutes, and Maverick started moving excessively, like more than I had ever felt or seen him move in the entire pregnancy. And it was to the point where like the only way I could describe it is it looked like he was trying to get out of my stomach. It was insane. And now Ray was passing out next to me, and as he's doing this, I was yelling from him like, oh my god, babe, look, you know, it looks like he's trying to come out. What the hell is he doing? And at this rate, his heart rate was at 144 beats per minute, which was perfect. Moving around, and then he stopped moving, and his heart rate went from 144 to 80. And I'm looking at it, and I'm waiting for it to go back up, and now I'm fidgeting with the thing on my belly trying to find his heartbeat, and I couldn't. And this was probably like a minute to a minute and a half that I'm trying to do this, and now Ray was getting to the point, it's like, well, we need to do something, like, what do we do? So he was gonna get up and go get a nurse, and instead I hit the call button. Now, I think this was kind of simultaneous how this happened, because I don't know who does the watching of these monitors, but there's somebody who sits at a computer and watches all the women on the monitors in case there's something to look out for, and then they'll come in the room and check on you, whatever. So after like a minute and a half, I hit the call button, and it was like simultaneous. I hit it, and then 4 nurses came rushing into the room. The one nurse is grabbing me by the knee, and she's like, work with me, honey, and she's flipping me around, and they're trying to get his heart rate back up, because now it had been like 2.5 minutes. His heart rate was really low. He wasn't getting oxygen. The one nurse is flipping me around, she's and freaking me out, and she did that for maybe, like, honestly, I couldn't even tell you because it happened so fast. It might have been like maybe 10 seconds that she's doing this. And then the other 3 nurses are bringing stuff in. The one nurse is at the computer, you know, the monitor thing, like trying to, I don't know what she was doing. But the one that's flipping me around, she turns behind her to the one nurse, and she's like, we got a 20, we got a 20. And I don't know what that means, but it didn't sound good. And she looked at me and she was just like, honey, change of plans, you're having that baby now. And I was like, what? So at that, now, she stopped flipping me around, and I honestly don't remember if she, at that point, had gotten his heart rate back or what. Everything had just happened so fast. But anyway, the other 2 nurses now, they're ripping my clothes off, they're putting a gown on me, the one's sticking the IV in my hand, and at the same time all of this is happening, the one nurse at the monitor is asking me all these questions, because now, like, they're registering me to get to have the baby. So she's asking me all these questions, and I'm sobbing because I was so scared, because first of all I'm thinking, like, holy crap, I don't know if my baby's okay. The fact that they're saying, like, no, he needs to come out now is scary, and everything just happening the way it did, it was scary. So they got me hooked up and everything, and I finally, like, Ray was like calming me down, and it took a couple hours before, like, anything really happened. So I had to ask twice, because, like, I wasn't sure what was going on. I was like, so, like, am I not leaving? Am I being induced? Which, by the way, must have been instinct for me, because that morning when we left, I didn't have everything I needed. My bag wasn't in the car because I had things that I didn't want to, like, explode and melt because it's summertime. So I had grabbed a couple, like, last minute things and my bag, and I was like, oh, just in case, you know, I'm just gonna put it in the car just in case. Like, I just wasn't sure. Lo and behold, we'd be having a baby. So anyway, now at this point, a couple hours had gone by. My phone had 0 service. I was on the hospital Wi-Fi, so I was able to, like, Facebook message people. Anybody with an iPhone who had their iMessage turned on, I can text, but otherwise, like, I couldn't make calls, I couldn't text anybody, all that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to call my mom at work to let her know I'm being induced, and my call wouldn't go through. Ray's phone was dead, and he didn't bring his charger like I told him to, which he ended up getting later on. But they did everything they had to do. They set the IV up. They had just, like, fluids going through the IV. Then somebody came in and took my blood. Then the ultrasound tech came in and did the ultrasound. And by then, a couple hours had passed by then. And then, I don't remember if my mom showed up by now or not, honestly, like, what happened first. But the start of the induction, they inserted this thing called Cervidil or Cervidil. I don't remember exactly how to say it. But I had thought that with induction, you just kind of, like, I don't know, they start you on Pitocin, that's it. But I guess, I don't know if it's just how my hospital does it, but I think they try to avoid Pitocin as long as they can. So they inserted this thing called Cervidil, and what that did was, I don't know exactly what the device looked like. All I know is it was attached to a string, and they had to insert it into my cervix, which was loads of fun. It was very painful, but there was, like, a string hanging out, like tampons. Like, every time I had to use the bathroom, like, I had to, like, pat myself dry and things. But the purpose of the Cervidil was to ripen my cervix more than it was, because at this point now I was still only 1 centimeter dilated, and I was 60% effaced, I think she said. So they wanted my cervix to fully efface so it could start dilating more. So that's what this was supposed to do. And it had to sit for 12 hours before anything else could happen. So I knew I was going to be sitting in the hospital for at least 12 hours before anything more was going to happen. So as you saw in my labor and delivery vlog, if you did, you know, I kind of hung out. They told me at first I wasn't able to eat, and then I come to find out I was, because I wasn't in active labor, which I was so happy to hear, because, like I said, I hadn't eaten since, like, 9:30 the night before, and at this point it's like 12 o'clock noon time, so I hadn't eaten forever. Maybe actually longer than that. It was like 1 or 2 o'clock actually by the time my food came. My mom was already there and everything. So, you know, we got to walk around, this and that, whatever. And we walked from like 9:30 to 10:30 for like an hour, and at that point, at night this was, now at that point they were supposed to then take out the cervidil. And there was a ton of women having babies at this day and the day before and everything around this time. So they were all tending to like everybody, which was kind of frustrating because like you didn't really have somebody just tending to you. So because of that, by the time it was time to take the cervidil out, there were no nurses available. So it was in for an extra like 40 minutes before they came in and took it out. So they came in, took it out, checked me, which by the way, at this point, the nurse came in and the midwife that was on call came in. And I don't know if it was already planned for them to do so. Like, I felt like I was in the dark for a lot of things, which really bothered me. But they came in and they checked me, and at the same time they're checking me, I guess they had already decided, well, they're going to break my water because it didn't break on its own. And I don't know if it was because of the circumstance of like everything that, the way everything happened, that they wanted to break my water and just get him out. But they didn't tell me they were going to break my water. So she's checking me, and now she's telling me as she's in there, I only effaced 10% more. I was 70% effaced, still 1 centimeter dilated. And at the same time, now I'm in so much pain. I was crying because they're so far in my business and doing what I didn't know what they were doing, which was I don't know the process of water breaking. All I know is this, they use this like crochet needle looking thing to break the water, but I know they have to like get into, I don't know how they do it. They have to get somewhere to break the water. They have to go like beyond your cervix, I believe. So the one nurse is all up in there trying to like open things up to get the midwife to get where she needed to get her device to break my water. So I'm crying in so much pain and like yelling, and finally broke my water. So that's what happened then. They broke my water. It was roughly maybe like 11:30, almost like 20 after 11 at night now this was. And from there on, I was in active labor. I like I said, everything is such a blur at this point. I don't remember how long it took after they broke my water for me to be feeling the contractions like I was, but I know it didn't take long. So they broke my water, and then I was in active labor. So then they came in and asked me, because now I'm at the point where like I was feeling every contraction pretty good. Like they ask you on a scale of 0 to 10 what the pain is like, and I feel like I was being very realistic in the pain, you know, the measurement of that. So for the longest time I would say like, oh, it's maybe like a 3 or 4. Maybe it's like a 4 or 5 now. And now at this point I said it was like maybe like a 7 or 8. It was getting up there. So they offered me this pain medication. I don't know what it's called, but she told me, she's like, I'm gonna put it in your IV and you're gonna kind of feel like you're drunk. You might want to just close your eyes. It's best just close your eyes, because I noticed every time I did open my eyes after that, it was like I was drunk. Everything was kind of like woozy and like moving, and it was actually very it was very unsettling. So I just kept my eyes closed the whole time. But now you talk about, I've been up now for, because this was, I think by the time they gave me that medicine, it was after like 1 in the morning, because it took a little while for the contractions to then progress, and they were offering me all this other stuff. Something like that. Honestly, my sense of time at that, with this whole experience, was non-existent. So I can't be too positive about the timing of things. So I'm sorry that I can't be more like accurate about that. But anyway, they gave me the medicine and they said, you know, best thing to try to do now is to go to sleep. Now, the pain medication didn't necessarily take away the pain of the contractions like an epidural would do, but it dulled them down enough for me to relax a little bit. But as soon as they gave it to me, I was just passing out. And like there was still fluid coming out from my water breaking, and like I don't recall this, but like my mom and my best friend who was in there and my husband was telling me, you know, like I'm sitting there, my eyes goes like, I think I'm peeing myself. I don't know if it's my water, or I think I'm peeing. I don't know, but I was nodding out on this stuff. But like I said, I was still feeling the contraction. So I was like falling asleep in between each one. At this point, they're like a minute to 2 minutes apart, and some of them were overlapping each other. Like everyone is watching the monitors, like commentating what's going on as if I don't know, as if I didn't feel it. First of all, they're commentating on what's going on with the monitors, and it really was like I'd have one and then it might be like a minute later to have another, and then maybe 2 minutes later I'd have one, it wouldn't even go fully away, and then I would be having another. They were just backpacking on each other. So I was still waking up in between, like during the contractions, and like I said, they weren't horrible, so I was still like resting in between, which was something compared to the nothing I had had prior of rest. But then I'd have to say probably that medicine only lasted for maybe an hour and a half, if that. I don't think it was definitely not any longer than like 2 hours, because now like Ray was asleep next to me, my mom had gone home for a little bit, my girlfriend, I don't remember where she was at this point, honestly. Oh, I think she went out in the waiting room to take a nap herself. So now I was very much feeling every single contraction at that point, and Ray was asleep next to me, and I was starting to get a little loud with expressing how I felt about these. But like I said, they were still like backpacking each other, so I could not rest. And everyone I'm having, I'm like, I had to keep moving my legs, and I'm gripping the shit out of the sides of the bed until I finally woke Ray up with how loud I was being, and then I was gripping the shit out of his hand, and I bared that. Now, initially I had full intentions. I was like, if I need it, I'm getting the epidural, which never really like left my plan. But I also at one point was like, you know what, if I can do without it, because I had been told so many times from people that once they get to a point where they decide they need it, they probably could have waited, because not long after was it time to push. It did not work out like that for me, so I'm glad I did it the way I did it. But anyway, I was bearing those contractions for a good hour and a half until I looked at Ray and I said, I cannot do this anymore. I was at the point where my whole body was shaking, convulsing, because I was in so much pain with every contraction, and they were just so simultaneous, and I was not getting a break at all. I gotta get the epidural. So at that point, I think I was only like 4 centimeters dilated at that point. So everybody had to leave. The one nurse came in to, I guess, kind of like help me, and then the anesthesiologist came in. And the anesthesiologist was so nice, and she was so like, the fact that she was so like soft-spoken and she wasn't very like pushy, because let me tell you, having contractions that hard and you have to sit up on the bed and they need you to like arch your back like this, and you also have this human sitting right here in front of you, so you can't even really arch that well, and you got to relax your shoulders in between contractions, and like it was one of the hardest things I had to bear. But the nurse that I had helping me, like, she was standing in front of me, and she has her hands on my shoulders, because she was telling me, you gotta keep them down, honey, you gotta keep them down, you gotta bear forward, blah blah blah. She ended up like putting her hands like around my neck like this somehow, and like just like breathing with me, and I don't know what she did to help, but she was such a tremendous help. She really helped to keep me calm and just had me focus more on the breathing than the contractions, because now like once you're sitting up and you're all bent over, it was just hard. It was really, really hard. But I finally got the epidural, which, by the way, I have to say was not bad. And maybe it's just because I'm okay with needles. I'm not bad with needles at all. But it really was like the way they're describing it, like, okay, a bee sting and a burn. And that's really all it was. Like, after she did everything she had to do, the worst part of the epidural was when they had to take it out the next day and they're ripping the tape off your back like you're getting a wax, honestly. But the epidural wasn't bad. And then as soon as I got it, she said they gave me the lowest dose. They said it was the test dose is what it's called. So I was still able to move my toes. I was still able to move my legs. I wasn't like completely paralyzed from the waist down. But it helped the contractions tremendously. I was finally able, everybody came back in the room, made sure I was okay, whatever. And I was able to finally go to sleep. So this I do remember, this was 5 in the morning-ish, because after I got the epidural, I was able to fall asleep. And I fell asleep until like 8 in the morning, and the shift changed again. My old nurse came back. That's how I knew it was like around that time. It was now 8 in the morning when the nurse came in and woke me up. And, oh, no, the nurse came in with the midwife, and they're like, okay, we're going to break your water. And I was like, that's what woke me up, because I heard somebody saying, time to break your water. And I was like, we did that last night. Like, don't, so, like, don't go back in there and do stuff. That was done last night. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, then let's check you. And at that point, I was now what she said, because every doctor and nurse, like when they're checking you, they all have different, you know, length of fingers and things, so they all have like a little bit of different of measurements. So the midwife had checked me and she goes, honey, you're 8 centimeters. We got to get you in the delivery room, which was across the hall, because I was in like the labor room, and they bring you into the delivery room when you're ready to deliver, or just about. So those 3 hours, I progressed from a 4 to an 8, which was great, because my biggest fear of the epidural was it's a toss-up with a lot of women. Some women say it slowed down their process of what's the word I'm looking for? What's the word I'm looking for? It slowed down the process of progressing. That's what I want to say. But some women say it helped progress them tremendously because they finally calmed down. And I think that's what I needed. And that's exactly what it did. In 3 hours, I went from a 4 to an 8. Good to go. So, but now, like, we go into the delivery room, and he wasn't born until 11:55 in the morning, so it's only maybe like 10 after 8 we get in there, and they check me again. The new midwife came in, and she checked me, and she's like, okay, you're at a 7. So I was like, what? The other one said 8, and that's when she explained like how it's different for everybody, but it's like, it's pretty much kind of the same, but I was 100% effaced. So she said I'm 7 centimeters dilated, and now once again I was in writhing pain of them checking me, because at the same time she's checking me, she decided she was going to go ahead and manually open my cervix from a 7 to a 9. So she's in there for a little bit, and at this point now, I think I had been in the delivery room for almost an hour. And what I didn't realize was the epidural had completely worn off. And I didn't realize that until she was doing that, because she even looked at me and she said, you can feel that because you know you had the epidural, you can feel that? And I was like, oh yes, I can feel that, and I'm crying again because it was really, really painful. As she's up doing what she had to do, I was almost done, blah, blah, blah. So now she manually opened me to a 9. So now I'm in so much pain yet again, and now the epidural had completely worn off. So now contractions are picking up even more, and he's much lower now, so it's a lot more lower pressure, and it's a lot more painful. I guess I can't say a lot more painful. It was probably equally as painful to the pain I was feeling before getting the epidural, but it was a different painful just because of now where he was, because now he's in the birth canal. He's way down low, and it was just, the pain was the same, but the discomfort was worse, I guess you can say. So now they got me to a point where, like, now my body's shaking again. That's how bad it was getting. My body's shaking again. And my mom at this point asked, like, isn't there something she can do to, you know, to make it hurt a little less, or something to relieve the pain? Because I know there's different positions you can be in and such. So the first thing they did was give me the peanut ball. And that was, number one, to help position me to help dull contraction pain, number one. But that was also to flip him around, because he was, I think he was face up or face down. He was the opposite of the face he was supposed to be. He was head down, but his face was not where it was supposed to be to give birth. So that's supposed to help that. They had me on my side with the peanut ball. And that was dulling contractions a little bit, but only a little bit, until at this point now I was just feeling everything. And I asked my mom, I was like, please, like, ask them if there's something I could do. And my mother-in-law had said, she was like, you know, I saw a woman, they had her on all 4s. So they tried that with me. That definitely, I liked that. Honestly, it didn't help the pain at all, to be honest. What it helped me to do was, like, move in different ways to try to get my mind off of it. Because the only thing I was doing to get through contractions laying down was breathing, which it only goes so far. And I could not stop moving my legs. They had to keep moving like this, up and down through the contractions. What getting on all 4s helped me do was, they had the bed upright, so like I was leaning on it like this. You could see pictures in my labor and delivery vlog actually of how they had me. But I was able to, like, rock back and forth. I had to move my head, but just like the swaying movements and the slow movements of everything was like the only way I could cope with it. So they had me like that for a good hour, and now within that hour I was in so much pain, I kept asking him, like, they can't give me a little bit more epidural, because now I'm fearing like I'm gonna feel this entire delivery process. Like, I got the epidural so that it would help me with contractions, but also with the hopes that I wouldn't have to deliver completely medication free at this point, because I had felt the worst pain in my life, those contractions, and I couldn't imagine what it would feel like having to give birth with no pain medicine. But they were refusing, and actually the one nurse said she was going to, and then the midwife, she was like, honey, there's no point now. She's like, he's almost ready to come, and I don't want to give it to you now. And you know, have it so where you can't feel what you're doing, because that I know is to be true, and I've heard nothing but that, is that if you have too much epidural when it's time to push, you can't feel what you're doing. So you don't know if you're pushing with all your might. You can't feel where the baby is to know if you have to bear down more or whatever. So the midwife was like, honey, look, like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it. So basically what that meant is from there, it was time to push, and that was around like 10 after 11 or like 5 after 11 in the morning. It was time to push, and they had me pushing with just my mom. They showed me exactly how to do everything because I didn't take birthing classes. So like I said, there were a bunch of other women there they had to tend to. So I had to now push with every contraction that I felt after they showed me how to do it. So they had to leave. There was no midwife, there was no nurse. It was just my best friend, my mother-in-law, my mom, and my husband. And my mom had one leg, my husband had the other. And through every contraction they were counting for me. I was pushing with no doctor and no nurse in the room. So for like 20 minutes we're like, we're gonna do this ourselves. And because I was feeling everything, I was doing such a good job at pushing that the 20 minutes they weren't there, by the time they came in, they told Ray he could feel his head. Like, you couldn't see anything just by looking, but he could feel his head. He was right there. So from there is when they told me just to keep pushing through the contractions, and now they're bringing all this stuff in to now, like, it's time. We're getting them out. So with that now, again, like I said, I was feeling everything, so my state of knowledge of time and everything just was completely out the window. And I had gotten to a point where now my contractions were still like backpacking, so I was pushing a lot and I was feeling everything, and so the nurses in there like cheering me on and things, and we were getting them out. So I pushed for roughly 45 to 50 minutes, less than an hour. Honestly didn't feel like that. It was such a blur, and I think because I also got to a point where after a good, like I said, I honestly don't know with the times, after some time I was falling asleep between pushing because I was so exhausted. So in between contractions I was falling asleep, and as soon as I'd feel one, I'd be up and I'm pushing. So then what happened next was just as scary as how it ended just as scary as it started out, with his heart rate dropping as it did. And that was that he still hadn't turned the way that they wanted him to. So now they had to turn him while he was coming out, and at the same time, now this was my birth plan, number one. I wanted to delay cord clamping, which that hospital is pro delayed cord clamping anyway, so they were going to do it regardless if they could. I also wanted the initial skin-to-skin contact, and now Ray was all gloved up because he was helping to deliver our son. It was something he really wanted, and I, after getting over myself and realizing that you get to a point where you don't care who sees, you don't care what happens, you just want him out, said, go ahead, do what you want to do. So he was helping Maverick be born. But his desire was to, like, when it was time for him to come out, like, he would take him out and then give him to me. But what happened next was, as soon as his head came out, they realized why his heart rate had dropped in the first place, and that was because the umbilical cord was wrapped 3 times around his neck. It was so tight, so now every time you're pushing, you're putting more pressure on the baby and more pressure on the umbilical cord, so now every time pushing, it's choking him. So at the point where his head was out and they saw the umbilical cord, she's like, so she took me by, like, right under my knees, and she pulled me to the side, and she's like, you gotta come near me, honey, and she flipped me to the side, and I'm like this, and there was no breaks at that point, like, even not contracting. She's like, honey, you need to push, and you need to not stop, you can't not take any breaths, like cleansing breaths, you just have to go into the next one, you have to get him out. So now I'm pushing, and from there, it was probably maybe just like 2 more minutes from there at that point. And at that point, to me, was like one of the coolest things ever, as well, as much as I was in pain, because when you're pushing with all your might, and anybody who has kids already knows this, but like I didn't know, this being my first time, with every push that I was giving, I felt like I was giving it my all. I really did. I just felt like I was giving my all. I didn't think I had any more in me to give. At that point, when they were telling me he needs to come out now, you cannot stop, I seriously feel like I became like the Hulk. And the pushing from there was, and I'm even saying it in my head, I was like, oh my god, I do have more, and I'm going to use everything. And I did, man. When I tell you, everything in me I took to then get the rest of him out. But like I said, medicine free, so I felt everything. So like the shoulders coming out, oh my god. The head, I don't remember. I really don't. In the midst of everything, I don't remember his head coming out. I don't remember like feeling that. I don't remember it happening per se. His shoulders, oh my gosh. Now at the same time, his shoulders hurt me so bad because they had to flip him the way they did, because not only did they have to flip him because he was like not facing the right way, but now she was spinning him to go against the wrapping of his cord. They were going the opposite way of that. So in the process of her doing that, he shoulder checked my pelvic bone. So when he came out, he shoulder checked my pelvic bone and he came out turning, so I tore pretty bad. And he fractured his collarbone because he hit my pelvic bone. But now, like, at the point where she had to take me and turn me, whatever, Ray could not help anymore. It was time for the doctor to take over, so he wasn't able to, like, deliver him. We also weren't able to delay cord clamping because she had to cut it off his neck right away. He needed air. So she quick clamped it, she let Ray cut his part, and then she was snip, 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 snip off his neck, and I couldn't take him right away because he wasn't breathing, he wasn't crying. He was paper white, and his ligaments, his arms and his legs and his hands were purple. I actually, if you pay attention to some of the pictures of like when I am holding him, you can still see that his arms are purple, and he was just, I know they're always pasty white when they first come out, I know that, regardless of race or anything, but he was a sheet of paper, ghostly white, and his little arms and hands were dark purple. So they took him right away, and you know, I'm like, as soon as that's done, it's such a relief. And then it took me maybe 6 minutes to birth my placenta, which was great. I was able to just do that on my own, without really any help from anybody. Like, they didn't have to help that out. I was able to birth it myself. I pushed it out. But at the same time, like, I'm pushing out my placenta, I'm watching him in the incubator to my left, and I'm looking back at Ray, and I'm like, why isn't he crying? Like, what is wrong? What's going on? Is he okay? You know, I see them, like, I don't know what they were doing, but they weren't able to just do, like, the normal stuff. They were trying to get him to breathe. Not that he wasn't breathing, but he just wasn't all there yet. He didn't have enough oxygen on the way out to be all right away. So after, I don't even know how long, like I said, the whole process, after however long it took, they had him all wrapped up and they were able to then give him to me. And at that point, he wasn't like crying, but he was making these little noises, like wanting to cry, but it was more just like, eh. And it was so like sad, but adorable. And they were telling me, you know, like, keep him up and keep him, like, you know, they wanted me to pat his back and rub his back to get him to cry, because they wanted him to cry and open his lungs up more. So, and then he was here. And then he was here. That's basically how that whole thing went. So unexpected, so stressful and nerve-wracking and scary, and also just so rewarding and amazing. And I honestly, though I wish I could have still gone through with my original birth plan, I wouldn't have changed anything, number one, because everything happened the way it did for his safety. So I wouldn't change how things went as far as that goes. And also just the fact that, you know, I didn't have to wait the week that I thought I was going to wait. He ended up coming not long after his due date because of everything. And he was okay. He was healthy, and he was here, and he was beautiful. And the fact that I'm able to say, it sounds kind of stupid, but the fact that I'm able to even just say that, like, I birthed naturally. I did not go through labor 100% naturally, no. But the birthing process was 100% natural. I was able to do that. I did it. I didn't really have a choice, but I did it, and I'm really proud to say that. And it was just amazing. The experience of childbirth in itself is something that I think truly changes you if you look at it that way. I guess if it means that much to you, it changes you. And it definitely did me. It gave me a whole new sense of confidence in myself and pride in myself, and just love in my heart for my son, for this little human that's half me and half, you know, the love of my life, my husband. And it's just an amazing thing. But that's that's pretty much it. That's how the whole thing went. I'm so sorry this is so long. I'm going to try to cut any unnecessary info out, and I'm just going to stop talking now, but I do want to, it's just about time to change and feed Maverick, so I will show him to you guys, and then I'm going to wrap this up. So this is our little love. He's a little fussy right now. Here he is. Mr. Maverick waking up. It's time to eat, so we had to wake his little butt up. He's getting angry. Here he is. Oh, baby. Say bye. Bye. He's like, I'm just going to eat your hand, Mom. Stay tuned for some updates. I think I'm going to do a 2-week update, which will be this Wednesday will be 2 weeks, just because a lot's happened since then, so I don't want to wait a whole month and have like a super long video. So I'll do like a 2-week update on him and me and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you all so much who have been here throughout this whole journey and who have inspired me and who have just been there and have been keeping up on this whole story with us, the whole journey. I really appreciate it, and I hope you guys stick around for the rest of this journey now. With, it's not a pregnancy journey, but now it's the journey of, you know, my son and my family, and I really hope you guys stick around for that. So until next time, I will see you guys in my next video, and thank you so much for watching. Thumbs up and subscribe and all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.